right, welcome back to Paw Patrol with your host, Dr. Jeff Dikis. Tonight, I am joined by, back in the house, once again, literally the same house, Dr. Ashley Dikis. How you doing?
Hello, I'm doing well. Thank you.
I like your new headphones. Can you tell the people that are listening all about your new headphones that you just received as a very special gift?
These are my Mother's Day gift headphones. Were they Mother's Day? No, they were anniversary.
Sure.
Right? It all kind of happened around the same time.
Yeah.
They are like a lavendery lilac color.
They're DMU purple.
They are DMU purple. I don't know that it's exactly on the color scheme, but it's close enough. So we will roll with it.
And you got a new podcast studio.
I have a new corner. I'm like...
That doesn't sound as good as podcast studio.
It's, compared to your space, it is my Harry Potter in the cupboard under the stairs.
Actually, we do have a place under the stairs. We should have put you under the stairs.
That actually probably would have been a good spot.
You'd have to sit on the floor, but
yeah.
Actually, now that I think of it, that is a good spot. Okay, we'll work on it. We'll think about it.
I don't know if I should have given you that idea or not, but here we go.
Introduce the people who are new to the podcast. We are gaining followers, gaining viewers. Every time I turn around, someone new is checking out the podcast. They may not know who the heck you are. Who are you?
Hello to those who are new. My name is Ashley Dikis. I am married to this individual that we are.
Lovely creature.
I am an assistant professor at Des Moines University in the College of Podiatric Medicine and Surgery. I see patients at the Des Moines University Foot and Ankle Clinic. And
clinic director.
I am the clinical department chair for foot and ankle.
That sounds fancy.
I just had my 5-year anniversary at DMU. So
time flies.
It does, indeed.
How's that transition been? When you first got there, you were closer in age to the students. Obviously, the students' ages stay the same and you keep getting older, right? So you were closer in age and now you're not. You're getting closer to the age where you could be their mom. Which is weird.
I feel that a little bit. I do. It's good. It has been a very wild ride because as we all remember what was happening in March of 2020 when I started at DMU.
What was that?
I know,
what
right?
Was it?
There's a little something going on. And so kind of jumping into this in COVID, and then also the university built a new campus. So also went through a big campus move. And also we had some retirements and transitions in faculty and leadership at the university. And so it has been different than my view of I'm going back to Des Moines University. It's where I went to school. So you have this very concrete image in your mind of what DMU is. And so I picture that teaching at the old campus and with all the same people. And then inevitably, as life goes, things change. And so it's been really cool, actually, in many ways, to have things kind of shaken up a little bit. So
yeah, it keeps it fresh. And the new campus doesn't exactly suck. So it's not you're slumming it out there.
It does not suck, no.
Place is ridiculous.
It's a great space. And the students always keep things lively and interesting and keep us on our toes. As time goes on, I get a little bit further away in age from the students and it creates a different dynamic, right? And it's interesting. I have to be a little bit more mindful maybe of my choices when I think of references. I referenced Doogie Howser, a popular TV show once upon a time, and I could tell that maybe not quite as many people knew who Doogie Howser was and maybe recognized that reference. So I do have to be a little bit more mindful maybe of my meme and reference choices, but otherwise has not been a big issue.
Yeah, it's kind of annoying, isn't it, when they have different references? And things today are worse. Like they don't have Scrubs. They don't have Seinfeld. They don't have the fantastic things. And everything is so spread out. All right, we're getting off topic. But yeah, I want them to understand the references because the references are good. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Old man, get up on the roof and shout to the heavens. Yeah. Okay, old man, go away.
They don't care about that anyway, right?
No, they don't.
No.
So other thing I thought was interesting is when you start at a job, in this case at the school, they have been there before you. And anyone who's ever been in a job, there's this weird social dynamic of whoever's been there longer holds some amount of power. And in this case, you're the attending and they're the student, but you're coming in new and they're the ones that have been there, and they almost have this kind of weird comfortability that you don't have. But then over time, now that's gone. Now you have been there longer than every single student. Have you noticed a change in that, or am I making that up?
No, I think you're right. I think that's probably, for any job, any new job, there's that sense of kind of the old guard. And in this scenario, it happens to be folks who are younger and our students. But no, you're absolutely right. But I just graduated just recently, kind of the first group that I got to be a part of more of their admissions process, and saw them on the front side of things, and then saw them all the way through to graduation, which is really cool. So it's exciting.
They graduated and you graduated. How is that possible?
I know. It's a wild world out there. I don't know.
Well, tell the people how you graduated. They're like, what the hell's going on?
I, for the past 2 years, have been doing a master's program through Iowa State University. So it's a master's in higher education, and with a focus on higher education administration. So
now you're learned good, or what's different?
Super learned. Yes.
Okay.
I got to learn a lot about the higher ed system. So it's not obviously just focused on medical education. So it's just higher ed in general. And so just having a better grasp of what that looks like, and then also being able to see all the changes that have come in the past 6 months in particular. So it was really interesting. It was a cool experience. The program through Iowa State is great. And it was all asynchronous. So it fit in with, at least to some extent, the life of somebody who has a full-time job and a family and all that good stuff.
Makes sense. Mm-hmm. I want to talk to you about speaking nationally. I think I'll use us as an example because I can't speak for anyone else. We went to a good school. We went to what I think is a pretty good residency in Pittsburgh. And we got out, and I thought people would be tapping us on the shoulder. Hey, you are fantastic. You have to come lecture. You have to come speak for us. You are great. That doesn't happen, does it? Have you ever been asked to lecture nationally?
No.
Isn't that crazy? You went to the top school, earmuffs, everyone else, one of the top residencies, and you lecture all the time at the school. You are one of the most qualified people. Edit that out. English, not good. One of the most qualified people in the country to lecture. And I thought it'd be like, oh, yep, emails, here they come. They're flooding in. Why do you think that is?
I think lecturing, it's interesting. It is partially people who are interested in doing that, right? And not everybody is, and not everybody needs to be. So part of it is people who kind of put themselves out there as, hey, I'm interested in lecturing. Those that maybe have heavy research involvement, so they've got research to share. I think that's a big part of it. And part of it too is just some people are good at it, right? And some people aren't. And I think that's part of it. And part of it is once you kind of get in there and get an opportunity for people to see you speak, hear you speak, and be a part of that, then that, I think, creates more opportunities. So part of it is just getting that initial kind of jump in. But obviously there's lots of people out there who are doing fantastic work, doing big things, are really, really smart. But it's a matter, I think, more so of putting yourself out there and almost creating the opportunities for yourself.
No, I'm sorry. That is incorrect. What we were looking for is, it's not what you know, but who you know.
It's a big piece of it.
Right?
But that's also part of putting yourself out there.
Yeah, but I think we as a profession could do a better job of targeting people who deserve to be targeted rather than hearing the same people over and over and over again. sometimes you go to conferences and you're hearing not only the same person, but the same lecture. Think about that. The same lecture. They couldn't even be bothered to put together a new PowerPoint, new slides, new information, to update things. They just fall into this status quo. And at that point, are we really even doing each other a service? Or are we just going through the motions? One of the main reasons I started this podcast, because I was tired of the way that things are going in the world of education. There's got to be a better way. And it bothers me when you show up to conferences and they don't take it, kind of as a disrespect to me. Oh, I'm just going to go through my slides. Yeah, you heard it. The last 5 times I gave this lecture is the exact same thing. I'm just going to give it again. It's almost kind of disrespectful to the audience, but I don't know. Am I just a bitter old man?
Yes,
maybe that's a separate question. Yeah.
I think that there's certainly, I don't disagree with many of the points that you make, but I also don't know that that's necessarily something that's specific to podiatry.
No, I don't. It probably isn't. It's just the realm that we live in and I'm experienced in.
And it does take, as somebody who puts lectures together on a regular basis and gives lectures, obviously not, nationally, I'm talking about from an education standpoint within the school, but it takes a lot of time and effort, right, to put together these presentations on the front end. So I can appreciate wanting to be able to utilize a lecture that you've spent a lot of time putting together in multiple venues.
Yeah, but people are taking time off of work, flying halfway across the country and spending their time and dollars to be educated. And I feel like it's just the least you can do is update some slides or update some information. Or if you can't do that, then say, hey, I have the same lecture. Why don't you hand it to someone else who has a little bit more passion for this and a little bit more drive, and I'll sit this one out. But that doesn't seem to happen.
Sure. I think there's probably a bit of a fear, too, that if you say no too many times, then people will stop asking.
Yeah. What do you think about how our profession integrates women into medical education? What do you think? We know it's an issue. We all go to conferences, we look up on the podium and we see a certain type of person. They happen to look a lot like me. What do you think? So we know there's an issue. What do you think we can do about it? What would be some things that we could actually put into action?
I think it's an interesting topic in the sense that part of what we see when we look to kind of the lecture circuit and the national circuit and whatnot are people who have experience, right? They're in a certain place within their career.
Yeah.
The demographics within the profession have changed drastically, even over the past 10 years. The number and percentage of, let's say, female students in podiatric medical education, even since the time we sat in the classroom to now, it's been a huge jump. And so I think naturally, to some extent, we will see that shift and change over time.
Sure.
On its own in some ways.
But isn't that just a passive wait for it to happen?
And I'm not saying that's the option, but I'm just saying that's going to be a part of it. I think a little part of it is the demographic swing that we've seen.
100%.
And that's going to be a bit of it. It doesn't tend to be people who are in their first year out in practice who are the people that you're seeing over and over again out on the lecture circuit. It tends to be people who are in a certain place within their career. So I think that's a piece of it.
I agree.
So part of it too just may be, are there a lot of women who are feeling empowered to stand up, step forward and say, I want to lecture, right? Like, as you already mentioned, it's not necessarily that people are coming and knocking down on your door wherever you're at in practice and being like, hey, we've heard you're out here doing great work. We want you to come and lecture for us on, the national level. That's not really how it works, right?
Right. Yeah.
But I think so part of it is when you look even to schools and residencies and whatnot, is there a avenue for people to gain experience, right? Are residents given an opportunity at their state conferences, for example, to give lectures, right? If you've had an experience before where you've been able to give a lecture to a large group scenario or whatever it may be, that's how you gain the confidence to be able to want to go forward and do lectures, on a national level or state level or whatever it may be. So I do think that's a little piece of it, and maybe encouraging and finding other avenues and ways which any resident, regardless of gender, can have the opportunity, but making sure it's an equal opportunity for anyone who's interested.
Do you think it's on the conference to seek those people out, or do you think it's on the people to make it known that they would be interested in lecturing, which is kind of weird because then it's kind of like, yeah, thanks, but no thanks,
right.
maybe.
Right.
But if neither sides make a move, then you're kind of status quo.
Exactly. I think perhaps there's a place for both, right? Perhaps there's a better way that we could seek out interested individuals, people who want to lecture. But also, I don't know that it needs to be that those that are organizing the lectures need to sit down and be like, all right, we need, this many men and this many women and whatnot involved. I don't know that that necessarily is what we're looking for either, right?
No, I think it's more just a representation of what the actual practicing public is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I don't know from your standpoint if you just think, I don't have time. Kids and family are kind of an easy cop out, may not be the right term, because you literally have family and kids and stuff, and we're driving there and we got this lesson, we got this activity going on. It's just like, how can I do all that and be expected to do X, Y, and Z? But, do you think that from your standpoint, that would be one of the reasons, or do you just think that's kind of an assumed, well, I assume they don't want to be involved because I assume that they're busy, because I assume that they have a family and kids?
I do think that probably happens, that there probably are discussions that are, held out there of somebody thinking, oh, I don't want to invite her to lecture, but gosh, she has a 2-year-old at home. She's got a baby at home. And I think maybe those thoughts are different when people are considering the females versus males to join them in those scenarios. I think that, again, it's one of those things that we don't want it maybe necessarily to be that way, but that's the true reality of it. And when we also look at data about kind of the amount of household work, childcare, those types of things that tend to fall in a male-female relationship, it tends to be that the women are carrying a bit more of that on their plate. Right. And again, also, if you are the one who is physically going to become pregnant, have the child, recover from that entire process, there's just a different amount on your plate. And if somebody would have come to me when we had an 18-month-old and a newborn and was like, hey, would you like to lecture on a national level? I would have been like, I don't know when the last time I showered was. No, I would not like to lecture at your conference. Please don't ever ask me again. You know what I mean? So I do think that it's a very complicated thing. I think what we don't want to see is that either people are purposefully not asking women, right? And I don't think that that's the intent typically behind these conferences. I don't think they're like, let's keep them out, hold them down, put our foot down. I don't think that that's the intention there. But I do think that it's actually probably a little bit more complicated, and there's multiple factors that are contributing. Okay. But I do also think we are seeing more and more females who are out in lectures and being involved, right?
And who deserve to be there. I'm not 110%, a proponent of
110%. Yeah.
And not just saying, okay, did we check this box? Did we check this box? Did we check this box? But more so just, who's good? This person. Yeah. Whoever they are, this person is great. They would do a fantastic job. Here they are. Right.
And let's not just put them in their own lecture track on the side.
Right.
Let's have them as part of the conference. So.
Okay. So let's take over starting now. You and I are in charge. Yeah. Actually, we don't want that. No, we like it's so much easier to just tear down the people who are in charge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then you don't have to. Yeah. That's what most people do, right?
And just throw darts, right? But don't have to actually.
Keyboard warrior.
Be in charge. That's right.
Anonymous. Anonymous. Type.
Right. So it is that time of the year when.
What time of the year?
Many folks are wrapping up their residency training.
Yeah.
We have graduation. Just got to attend the DMU commencement, which is always a grand affair and is very enjoyable. And it's very cool to see how excited everybody is and just the energy and whatnot. And I'm sure the same can be said at all of the schools.
Super boring.
It is
just
it's
so
not
boring.
Boring.
Do you want to hear everyone's name read off that is in this entire school all at once? Like, no, I do not.
Everyone deserves to have their name read. So
but
gladly.
I just don't want to. I don't want to hear all of them.
Mm-hmm.
I want to hear mine.
All right, negative Nancy. So
real talk. It's boring.
So, as everyone is preparing to wrap up this last 2 weeks, really, of their residency training.
Yeah.
If you could give any advice to those who are getting ready to head out into practice, who are finishing up residency, if they could grasp one last little bit of information or one thing that they could ask while they're still there, or what would you do differently if you could go back and do it again? What would you have focused on at the end of residency as we were prepping to leave Western PA?
I would say two things. Number one, it's too late. You should have cared about this a long time ago. Don't wait 2 and 9/10 years and then you're like, all right, now what do I need to do?
All right, Dikis. But if they could, what would be, what do you think are those kind of important things that maybe I should say, what are the things that you think you probably didn't appreciate enough and focus on enough when you were in residency that you kind of wish you would have, or what were the harder pieces of starting out into practice?
It's really tough because when you're that young, you don't know what you don't know. And so if I wrote down if I got a piece of paper and I wrote down every single thing, it would sound common sense. It would sound like, don't necessarily buy a house on your first job, right? That's common sense. But did we do it? Yep, sure did. Like, don't put your loans into forbearance. Make a minimum payment on it, income based. That's common sense. But did we do it? Yep. Mm-hmm. Right. So these are things that you can learn from as you go along. Could you have paid better attention to billing and coding? Yep. That's going to be a big part of your life here very quickly. And you can't learn it in these last 2 weeks, but that's going to be common sense. Oh yeah. Pay attention to billing and coding. Yeah. That makes a whole lot of sense. All these things are not going to be terribly surprising, but they are things that you almost slowly pick up over time, whether you want to or not. As long as you are integrated into the residency program, you should gather all of the information that you need to be successful. That does not mean you're going to hit the ground running and you're going to hit home run after home run. You are going to you're going to stumble out of the blocks. You're going to start seeing patients and there's going to be something that you don't know what to do, or you're not sure what the heck that is, or I never saw this before. How the heck am I supposed to know what this is? And if I told you, well, you're going to see, pigmented villonodular synovitis or something, and then you're going to be like, well, okay, I'll study that. But we can't predict that. So there's going to be things that are going to be curveballs that you'll never be able to be prepared for. So that's not really an answer other than to tell you you're better off at the beginning of the residency being integrated. And I think most people do. I've been around enough residents in my days that people take it seriously. They understand that it's a job. They have to show up and do a good job, not only for their co-residents and their residency director and attendings, but selfishly for themselves. This is my future. These are the things I need to know. So I don't know that you're going to learn anything in the last 2 weeks that it's magically going to change your life. You will have either accumulated that knowledge over the last 3 years, or you're going to have to stumble through those like the rest of us did, because you can't predict what's going to come your way in the first year or two in practice. What would you say to them?
No, I agree. I think just kind of thinking about that theme of, if I could go back to where I was sitting in that position again, is there something that I would do differently? I think the billing and coding is such a huge part of that. And I think we had a lot of exposure, luckily, and I think that varies a lot depending upon the program, from my understanding. But even then, it's such a bear. right? It's just such a complicated system. And so there are lots of opportunities once you get out into practice. I think if you could be really motivated to teach yourself anything and to take the extra kind of initiative to go to billing and coding seminars or whatever it may be, I think that's money well spent to understand that well. I think that's a big piece of it. I think just to know, I was in clinic this past week, and our student group that we're with now, it's their very first clinical rotation. They just started into clinic.
They're still excited.
They're very fresh. They have not been beat down by the system, right?
They still have that glow in their eyes. They do. It hasn't burnt out yet.
They've got crispy, clean white coats, and they're
short white coats. I love wonderful. The short white coats.
Yeah, it's great. But one of them said, "How long does it take before you feel comfortable doing this?"
10 years.
I said, I'll let you know when it happens. but
do you still feel like you're playing dress up? You put your white coat on. You're like, I have a stethoscope. Look at me. They're like, ma'am, are you even supposed to be here? Like, yeah, I think. Yeah, no, I am. I am supposed to be here.
I feel that way every time. I do anything adult-ish, right?
When will we feel like an adult? Yeah. Ever? I'll have a walker and low back pain, and I'm just going to be like, no, not yet. Don't feel like an adult.
Haven't gotten there.
Maybe it'll hit me like a freight train one day. This is the day. Yeah. Now I'm an adult.
Yep. So but I do think that there is something, to be said for the fact of understanding if you are one of those individuals who is just getting ready to graduate residency and you have so much knowledge, hopefully a lot more kind of new, cool things that Jeff and I don't even know, right? We always hope that the next group of students and residents will know more than we do when we graduated.
I know it all.
So
maybe I don't know what I don't know. Does that ever blow your mind?
Yeah.
You're like, no, I know everything. And you're like, nope.
I feel overwhelmed on a daily basis. Everything I learn, I realize there's
that's
so
hard because they're asking you so
know.
Many questions. You're like, I don't know. It's probably in a textbook somewhere. Anyways, go on.
But I think it's good to know that as you're getting out into practice, it's not like just because you just finished residency and you've got all this knowledge and you've got the certificate that it means that you are going to feel comfortable right away. Yeah. There's going to be a transition period that may last a couple of years before you really feel like you've tackled enough things and come out on the other side successfully that you feel quote unquote comfortable, whatever that looks like.
I think it depends on the dynamic of your group, because if you go into private practice by yourself, you're going to feel like you're on an island. If you jump into a group practice where there's some other providers of your same specialty, maybe you don't feel as thrown into the deep end. You can bounce ideas off of other people, or you can do this top secret trick where you marry another podiatrist and then you have this built-in person that you can ask all these questions to. That doesn't mean they know the answer though, because we're the same age.
That's true.
Roughly.
No, it's true. I think it's but I just think it's something that's important for people to understand. I think the students were feeling a much larger, overwhelming sense of like, oh my gosh, I don't know, right? They're not supposed to yet. That's the thing. Yeah. They don't know. They're not supposed to know everything yet. But even when you graduate from residency, it still doesn't mean you're going to know.
Well, every step of the way, you're going to feel uncomfortable. Your first day in clinic as a third year, you're going to feel uncomfortable. Your first day on fourth year rotations, you're going to feel uncomfortable. Your first day of residency, you're going to feel uncomfortable. First day you show up on an external rotation. Remember showing up to the ED in Pittsburgh, level 1 trauma center at one of the busier trauma centers in the country, and you're like, I'm like, oh, what is going? Literally, if anyone has seen The Pit, that's what we were in. Pit. We were in the pit. How much did that show resonate with you in terms of like how real it was, not only from a Pittsburgh standpoint, but an ER standpoint? It was eerie to me.
Yeah, no, I agree. They have done an unbelievable job. Just, I think, capturing what it feels like to be in a busy emergency department setting. It was almost, I think we were saying the first episode we watched, we were feeling a little bit like
Yeah.
I don't know.
I was anxious.
I
felt
know.
like I was
I think
there.
that's what it was too. I think I'm feeling anxiety just looking and seeing like the board with all the different colors on it and all of the patients, and just the way the kind of, I don't know, hectic kind of environment and just the interactions. I think that did a fantastic job with that show. It's far and away the most realistic, but yeah.
I agree. Still the best medical show of all time is Scrubs, though.
Scrubs is really good.
Trying to think of others. ER, Pitt.
Yeah, ER's
Grey's Anatomy. Oh,
yeah,
that one's terrible.
The first couple seasons of Grey's Anatomy, fantastic.
Okay, let's separate the drama. Fantastic. The medical accuracy.
Yeah,
horrible.
Maybe not so much. Yeah, House. House.
Yeah, it got too repetitive because he was creating diagnoses that's like one person in the world, and somehow he's coming up with it.
Yeah.
Anyways,
a good one.
Decent show. But Pitt was a little too real for us, wasn't it?
Yes. But yes, you're right. It's just be uncomfortable. Just be comfortable with the fact that you will still feel uncomfortable even though you have made it through all of your training.
Indeed. Let's go through some questions here that we have received. You want to do that?
Sure.
All right. So the first question we have is, how do I avoid burnout during residency? You could apply that to life too. So it doesn't just have to be residency. How do I avoid burnout? That's one of the most common things that physicians face these days. I think people have always probably dealt with burnout and handled it in different ways. Substance abuse, however, for better or for worse, historically. And now, mental health is starting to become a much more focused upon thing and taking it more seriously and understanding how critical it is. But how can people avoid burnout?
I hear a lot about this on the student level, even, right? We all know that medical education is a daunting task and there's a lot on your plate, and it becomes all the more challenging and real once you move into a scenario where the decisions you're making can literally be life and death, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Now, you should have obviously people who you can always go to and oversight and whatnot as a resident, but it's still, there's a lot on your plate and there's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
So I think that it's a really difficult thing. And there's not like there's one thing that's like, oh, do this one thing and, meditate for 10 minutes and you'll be fine. That's typically not how this works. But I do think that it's really important during residency to maintain some kind of social network.
Yes.
Even if it's just outside of work. Now, I say that, but it can be your co-residents.
Yes, but outside of work.
Yes, but there needs to be some amount of taking advantage of that time that you are off, making sure that you are still staying in touch with family and friends, even if it's just phone calls. Oftentimes when you're doing residency training, you may be far away from family and friends, and that I think also can add to that sense. I think it's really important to try to take care of yourself kind of physically as well, which I think is really challenging during residency. You're working really long hours, getting disrupted sleep. I really appreciated the fact that we had an attending in residency who every afternoon, even though we were on a very busy service, he would take time and we would all go to the gym for like 20 to 30 minutes.
He beat the hell out of us.
I've
never worked out that hard my whole life.
I know. One of just like the best attending, just an incredible person. And so we had such a good experience that it was like there's a little part of your brain that was stressed because you could hear your pager like buzzing and beeping as we were up there. But he made it a point that we had a super busy day. We would have been in the OR all morning. But as we were going around, we would always take this time. And even if it's only 20 minutes, it's amazing how much that can change the trajectory of the rest of the day, right? Sure. Like, I think we feel like, well, I don't have any time to do things like it. And I'm not saying you have to go do pull-ups and lift weights and whatnot, but I did get much better at my pull-ups during that rotation. But in any case, even if it's take a walk outside for 5 minutes,
Yeah.
Do something. I mean, there is always a small bit of time that you could take away for yourself. It doesn't have to be like, well, I don't have an hour to go work out, so I'm just not going to do it. Or I'm too tired, I can't possibly do it. I think it's taking some time to step back away from the work is just a little thing that you can do. But I also think it's making sure that if you are feeling really overwhelmed and at those times when you are feeling really burnt out, talk to somebody about it. I think it's so much harder when you kind of suffer in silence.
Yeah.
I think that making sure that you are, speaking to your co-residents, somebody in that circle within your residency training, your residency director, whomever it may be, I think that if you're getting to a place where you're feeling really overwhelmed, that it's important to make sure that you're talking to someone about it.
There's a lot more resources than there used to be.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
In residency, and your employer tend to have resources of things that can take some things off of your plate or just someone to talk to. Burnout, I think, is a sign of caring.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
It's either a sign of caring or getting to the point of apathy. I'm not really sure, but usually if you burn out, it means you care too much, you're doing too much, you got too much on your plate, you're go, 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 you're type A, or you're just kind of like, oh, I'm sick of this. This is just kind of whatever. But I think the advice applies to the both sides of the coin there, in that the things that you can do to avoid that are what you mentioned. Talk to someone, do things outside of work, do things that make you happy, set aside time. You can always find time for something that makes you happy. Like in school, you joke about it, but I wouldn't really study on Saturdays because it was football Saturday. And that made me happy. That was something that I looked forward to. And you do have to sometimes sacrifice some time doing something else, but there's always time that you can find to do things that make you happy. So I don't know if there's one specific answer for everybody in order to avoid burnout, but if you recognize the signs that you're starting to feel burnout, then that's the time to look into doing something about it.
Mm-hmm.
What are the best ways to stay organized and manage my time? So kind of a spinoff on that, because if you find time to do something that makes you happy to avoid burnout, that also involves managing my time. What are the best ways to stay organized and manage my time? What do you use? You use like a planner, your calendars? What do you use?
Yeah, I think it's different for everyone because everyone's kind of oriented a little bit differently about what works for them. But I think my biggest piece of advice, again, from being around students, residents, and then considering just, myself out in practice, I think it's making sure that you're not using some kind of a system that is time consuming and cumbersome to organize. So what I found, there've been time periods. I'm somebody who loves a good planner, get out all my rulers and my highlighters and my pens and do all the things. And I've used online systems and whatnot. But there are times when I find myself being like, wow, I'm spending a lot of time doing the organizing.
Yeah.
That's probably I could probably use a much simpler system.
But I would argue sometimes people get some peace of mind of knowing that they are organized.
100%.
That extra time is well worth it because that provides them the peace of mind to know that they are organized.
But it's a balance, right? It's when you start to recognize, wow, this is taking more time than what I'm willing or wanting to spend to do the organizing, when I probably could get it accomplished in maybe a less aesthetic way, sure, or less, technology kind of driven way. If there's a simple answer for a way to stay organized, there have been time periods where right now I just use like a blank sheet on an app on my tablet, and I just handwrite a list. I've done times where I've just had a yellow legal pad and I just write a list and I check things off. Mm-hmm. I use the notes section on my phone quite a bit, and I live and die by my Outlook calendar. Part of that is driven by that is a very DMU heavy usage. Yeah. Is the Outlook calendar, but that works well for me. But I agree. I think that you have to find a system because, again, being a student, being a resident, being an attending, you have to find a way to stay on task and make sure that you're not letting things slip through the cracks. But it's also hard when you have work duties and home duties and all of these different things. And how do you find a system that kind of merges all of that together successfully without being cumbersome.
I would recommend people get a wife who's organized and let them do it.
It's working out really well for you. I've found that.
That's pretty good.
You're thriving. So, yeah. Good for you.
That would be my advice. So that was an easy one. Okay, next. Says, how much independence should I take versus asking for help? I think that's an interesting dynamic. You can look at it as a student, as a resident, and as an attending, because we get people of all ages who listen to this, and probably some non-physicians. Actually, there's a lot of non-physicians who listen to this. Mm-hmm. How much independence should I take versus asking for help?
Are you thinking maybe like during training? Like,
I'm picturing students who think that they're going the extra mile when really it's either slowing you down or annoying you. I'm thinking of people in residency that they're like, well, I went ahead and you got to do the timeout, so you can't really start the case. But they went ahead and did something, and you're like, wait, why'd you do that? We weren't going to do that. Right. Versus, if you're like, oh, can I, should I do this? Can I do that? And you're kind of like, yeah, you're a big kid. You can do it. Mm-hmm. There's going to be a line there of overstepping your boundaries, and then someone thinking, man, you're kind of worthless. What can you could do this on your own now.
I think there's things that you can always do to prepare without taking it too far. Right. Yeah, so I think a lot of it is about being prepared for various different scenarios. And then when you find out, okay, what is the plan, and you finalize that, being ready then right away to move forward with the plan.
I think that's good advice, because then you're not overstepping your boundaries, but you do seem prepared and ready to go. Mm-hmm. As soon as they ask you, hey, can you do that? Like, yep, it's already halfway done, or I'm well on my way to completing that.
It's something I think as simple, even if you think about, for our students out there, or even, new residents, if you don't know if this attending is going to use a calf tourniquet or a thigh tourniquet, have them both in the room. Don't just open one and make an assumption that you're going to use this one or you're not, if you don't know. But I think having both of them ready, that's how you show that you are thinking ahead, and you know that it could be one of these two options, and you've got them both available. And so you're ready to proceed accordingly. So I think it's more about the preparation.
I bet you were a good resident.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
I tried.
Best.
I'm a preparer. So I think that probably was in my favor.
Yeah.
A little bit like type A.
You're a trier. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
No, that's great advice. Just being prepared, I think, is the ultimate thing that you can do without overstepping your boundaries and not asking for, not seeming like you don't know what the hell's going on. So.
Well, because the kiss of death is to not be prepared, because you got one thing that's in your control. If you know that you have a case the next day and it's a ankle fracture, whatever it is, if they come into the room and say, well, let's put on a thigh tourniquet, do you have the thigh cuff or whatever? And you're like, well, I didn't know what cuff you were going to use. So like, come on. Right.
Yeah. Is that the Boy Scouts? Always be prepared. Is that their motto? I don't know.
It sounds good.
If it's not, it should be.
Yeah.
Boy Scouts, always be prepared. Always be prepared. Okay, next question. How do I keep up with medical literature without drowning in it?
Good.
There's a lot.
Luck.
There's a lot out there. There's a lot of journals. Mm-hmm. How are you going to stay up to date? Someone should create like a website or something. Yeah. You can call it date up to date. I don't know, something. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They'll figure it out.
I do think you start to get those journals that you really like to read regularly, right? I think the beauty now of podcasts and online and whatnot is that there are a lot of resources that you can even be driving to work, if you're so inclined, and listen to the latest article from Foot and Ankle International, and they're giving a recap on one of their articles, right? Or from Journal Foot and Ankle Surgery, Pod Patrol, whatever it may be, you have access to that. So it's not just once upon a time you had to wait for that to show up in your mailbox, right? And physically read the articles. You can also, I think, take that information in a lot of different forms now, which I think is really a helpful piece for staying kind of up to date.
Yeah, there are lots of resources. One of them is something that we created called Gatekeepers, where we have the authors of the journal on once per month, and we try to have on relevant journal article authors and discuss that with our buddy Brad Abicht. And check that out if you haven't seen that before. That's one way to stay current. Upcoming, we'll be posting journal article reviews on the Pod Patrol Instagram. So not Foot Doc Duo Instagram, but Pod Patrol Instagram. We're going to be posting some journal club reviews, journal article reviews on there that are very relevant. And yes, doing journal clubs. Lots of residency programs do journal clubs. I think this question is probably more so for people who get out of residency, because then family, life, job, free time, friends, sports, everything gets in the way of reading journal articles. I don't think we've perfected the AI integration of journal club knowledge quite yet, but I envision a day where there will be a website and you can pick your topic. You know, we would select foot and ankle surgery, podiatry. Someone else might choose dental or otolaryng, something I can't pronounce, ENT. And then it would kind of dispense, okay, June 2025, here's a summation of some of the latest research that's coming down, and it's just like one or two sentences, and they're almost like headlines. You know how when you scroll through a news app or something and you read the headlines, and then you do that thing, you're like, oh, did you hear about I'll try to make it something positive. Did you hear about the guy that won the lottery in California? And you're like, no, what happened? You're like, I don't know. I didn't click on it.
Yeah.
But it sounded cool.
Yeah.
Like, do you ever do that? You're like,
oh, yeah.
All I know is the title of the article. Silly. But point being, with journal articles, you could have a little AI. Okay, this isn't helping people because it doesn't exist yet. There are some research aggregators from AI if you type in a specific topic. If you're doing research on a specific topic, that exists. I'm talking about almost like, periodically just browsing and seeing what research is coming down
from various different journals, from various different resources. Yeah.
So you don't have to subscribe to and maybe if you want, they still want you to subscribe. So then if you click on it, you would have to, get the entire article, but almost like a little summation of what they found.
I do think that when you first get out, you may find actually that you have a little bit more time to get into the groove of how are you going to include that within your kind of week. So when you are new out in practice, one really kind of helpful way that I found when we first got out was that I scheduled it into my week. So I looked ahead and thought, okay, where do I have 1 hour, however long it is, you can set it aside. And that's the time that I was going to just kind of try and browse through the journals that I typically looked at. So I think you almost have to kind of try to build it into your schedule. And I say that now as somebody who mine is like a moving target. All my weeks look different. Yeah. And if I find time in between meetings or whatever it may be, then I'm not sure that I'm ready to start a new task or whatnot. Sometimes I'll just open up the website and start flipping through and see what's out there. But you do have to make a concerted effort. You need to either be listening to podcasts or you're going to have to schedule a time to kind of update yourself if you want to stay in the know of what's out there.
Very fair. Mm-hmm. We have a gigantic announcement. We are starting another podcast. You and me and you. Arch Enemies podcast. What do you think about it?
I think it's very exciting.
Can you feel that? I felt it. You're super stoked to start another podcast. Why are we starting another podcast? You and me, we're arch enemies.
No, I think that the goal of this other endeavor will be to have something that's a little bit more geared to the public, in that it is not necessarily quite as in-depth into the nitty-gritty, which you will still hear every bit of here on Pod Patrol, but it's geared more towards those individuals who just want to learn a little bit more about whatever issues going on from a foot and ankle standpoint, somebody who just, is having heel pain and doing a little bit of research and wants to hear a little bit more. So they'll be quick, shorter podcast episodes, and hopefully maybe something that if it ends up being a good resource, something that you could potentially even use as a resource for patients and whatnot. Hey, you're having some, these kind of a cool thing to check out. So we'll see.
Absolutely. Looking forward to Arch Enemies coming soon to a podcast feed. Well, same podcast feed, so you don't have to even worry about it. It'll come to you. I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited. I think it's going to be fun. We built out a second room under the stairs. Podcast studio sounds a lot better. Podcast studio. We're going to have to get the Arch Enemies logo going up here, and we're going to have to get you something behind you. You got that blank wall there. Mm-hmm. You're excited. I can feel it.
Very.
Well, thanks for hopping on tonight. I think this has been beneficial for people to hear our point of view on some of these things, and maybe it wasn't beneficial, but if that's maybe the case, then they're not listening to my voice right now because they already turned it off.
That's true. So thank you to those who have made it through to the end of our just jumbled thoughts from Jeff and I tonight. But hopefully it was helpful. And best of luck to those who are in that transition right now as they move from their residency training and into practice. We're excited for you. It's an exciting time. Congrats to all the recent graduates at all of the colleges. And we're just excited for you to enter into next chapter.
Absolutely. We appreciate everyone's support. And until next time, thanks for joining us in this episode of Paw Patrol with Dr. Ashley Dikis, alongside me, Dr. Jeffrey Dikis. Until next time, thanks everybody for watching.
Disclaimer. Opinions expressed are those of the content creators and do not represent any employer or entity. The information shared is for informational purposes only and should not be construed as medical advice or used in any legal capacity, including establishing standards of care. All efforts have been made to comply with HIPAA regulations. No guarantees are made regarding the accuracy of statements or opinions provided. Interaction with the podcast does not establish a doctor-patient relationship. Please enjoy this podcast responsibly.